Welcome to Electric Evolution with Liz Allan. This podcast is about the journey to a more sustainable future in order for us to be able to do our bit to achieve net zero. I'll be discussing a variety of topics with experts in their field in order to educate and increase our knowledge of clean energy, electric vehicles and the electric vehicle infrastructure. So whether you're an individual wanting to make a difference at home, a small business or a corporate, this podcast is just for you. So today on the podcast, I have got Randal Smith. Now, Randal and I met back in January at, and I can't even remember what it was called now. It was the EV Magazine Live, wasn't it? Yeah. So, and it's really exciting because Randal has recently become Chief Operating Officer for Urban Fox Network. Well done, you.
Well done.
But thank you for joining me today.
Hey, thank you for having me. Thank you for asking me.
So, I wanted to just kind of give a bit of your history, and then you can give me a bit more of, you can kind of add on as you see fit. You were originally in the RAF as head of engineering operations. Yep. You were head of transformation at Jaguar Land Rover, and you were involved in the Jaguar I-Pace project. Mm-hmm. Come on, tell us more, please, Randal.
Oh, where do I start? So, I had a long career in the Royal Air Force, left in 2015. My last role was running the search and rescue helicopter force engineering element. So that's
right.
The big yellow helicopters that fly around and rescue people off hillsides.
Yes.
And I had to build up a whole engineering organisation and take it off in a new direction. So that was 250 people across 9 locations. Prince William in the mix as well, just to complicate issues.
Oh my gosh.
And then I joined...
Yes,
it's all over the place. But he's a really nice chap anyway. But and then I joined Jaguar Land Rover. I was the PM on the Jaguar I-Pace, which was a real sort of privilege because we were in a race basically with the likes of Audi and BMW and Porsche to be the first premium OEM to make an electric vehicle in Europe. And we won it. We were racing through. We took it from concept through to final production. And again, leading a whole load of teams to produce that. And that car went on to win 62 international awards and Car of the Year in 2019. So it was a real privilege to work on that and see that vehicle being developed. And then moved across the company, and I was then involved in electrifying the Jaguar Land Rover UK retailer network. So they'd never worked with an electric vehicle before, so we had to put in a charging network, electric tooling, training, safety policy and all that business. And as we were doing that, my teams and I were doing that across the UK, the I-Pace was launching into the UK behind me, and that launched it into the UK market. And then, as you say, once that was done, I became head of UK transformation, improving the retailer network. And then we got hit by COVID and all that sort of fell apart. We had all sorts of issues there. I then got headhunted into a company called Beatty, who were an established telecoms company, and they wanted to build up an EV charging side of the company. And because I'm apparently well connected in the EV industry, I opened my address book and we built that whole EV charging arm up and started getting the business in, started establishing a name for ourselves. And then I got headhunted into another company, which was the Urban Fox. And Urban Fox is a sort of amalgamation, a partnership between Urban Electric, who have been around for 5 years developing this very unique pop-up charger for the on-street residential area. And they went into partnership with Balfour Beatty Investments, who've got this huge conglomerate of building infrastructures and everything else. And out of that partnership came Urban Fox, and we formed up finally in March, and we're at the various fully charged shows and various shows in the future with a very unique charging solution. It's been tried out through various councils, it's already been proven, and people are very excited by it. So here we come, folks.
And last time we spoke, it had been a little bit secret squirrel for a while, hadn't it?
Don't mention it. It was very. There was a lot of, because there's a lot of funding involved. There's £60 million funding coming in from Balfour Beatty to fund the project, and whilst Urban Fox effectively is a startup, it's got a lot of backing on the credential side from Urban Electric with the technology. The version we're launching is Mark IV of the charger. And various people can look at my profile and you'll see the video, or the Urban Fox website, and you'll see the video of this popping out the ground.
Yeah.
And you've got 2 chargers on it and it will go back down. and it's a charge point that's been designed. A lot of councils now want to see flush pavements. They don't want to see a lot of bollards going down.
Yeah.
So they've got a flush pavement with this. You don't need extra equipment to plug into it or anything else to operate it. You can just operate it off your standard cable. It's going to be contactless payment as well, which fits in with what the government wants. It's accessible for disabled users and wheelchairs and everything else. So there's a lot of credentials going for it. And then when you've got the whole infrastructure and knowledge and clout from Balfour Beatty as well, those two forces coming together in Urban Fox, it was a very formidable force that we're dealing with.
Absolutely. It's because
Hopefully.
Balfour Beatty have been around. I've seen Balfour Beatty around for years and years and years.
Yeah.
So when did they pick up on Urban Fox then?
I think it was about just over a year ago. They kind of developed an ideal partnership because it's Balfour Beatty. A lot of what they do as well is building housing estates and residential areas.
Yeah.
And the charger we have, whilst it's ranged, it's aimed at sort of the residential area. You can also put it in council car parks and everything else. And we're getting a few approaches about that, and down the roadside. But if you think that 60% of homes in the UK have off-street parking, so they can take use of home charging facilities, 40% don't have that. So they come and park the car up outside at night, and they've got nowhere of charging.
No.
So this provides that solution on the roadside outside people's homes, where you come along on your app, you pull it out of the ground, and there's YouTube videos of it. And if you read all the comments, everyone's going, "Oh, really cool! That's great! That's fantastic!" And kids nowadays, they want to operate off apps and stuff, and that's what this does. You pull it up and you plug it in and you charge, and once you finish with it, it goes back in the ground. So it's a very neat solution. It's a very stylish solution. It's futurized to go the distance and last for the future. It's very easy to install. You haven't got anything stuck up on ground. Very reliable. I mean, the trial ones we did across 4 councils, they had a 99.5%, greater than 99.5% uptime. So very little failure on them at all. You can't vandalise them very easily because they go into the ground. So they're not easy to do. So it's a very exciting opportunity for us.
No, that is. I mean, I saw the video and I just thought, oh, this is really interesting to see because I've not seen any charge points do this. And when we spoke before, you were saying that it takes a lot less concrete compared to some of the other charge points that are actually in the ground, because I'm assuming so you're still going to have to dig, aren't you?
Yeah.
But when it goes in, does it go in as like kind of one unit and a hydraulic kind of?
Yeah, effectively that's what it is. If you can imagine a sort of box framework with drainage holes at the bottom, so when any water comes through, it'll go. Yeah. And you just dig the hole, and there'll be a bit of concrete fixing around it, and then you just drop it in. And if it does go wrong for whatever reason, as technical things do, you could pull it out and swap it for a brand new unit within 30 minutes. So we've got a sort of network of people around who are prepared to do that sort of thing. We'll build that up as we go through the networks.
That's great.
So great. It's gonna go very, very well.
Absolutely. I think the idea of actually having something flush to the pavement that that will, because didn't you say to me before, isn't there something on the actual, because you've got two, there are, instead of just being a charge point with one connector, isn't there 2 connectors on there as well? Yeah.
So effectively what you've got, because we did a lot of research with councils, and councils were getting worried now because a lot of people have lamppost chargers now, and a lot of people are going down that route, and that's great. But I live in a village and I've got lampposts that are probably 100 metres apart, which is great if I'm trying to charge 6 electric cars and I can only do one and everything else. So this thing sort of comes up, it's got a charge point on either side, so you can charge 2 cars at once, 7 kilowatts. And at most what we're going to have is there'll be what they call a feeder pillar, which will be a small cabinet, often in green to sort of blend in with the surroundings. And we'll have a card terminal on there. So basically that's where your contactless payment can be. So you can either pay through an app or you can pay on the contactless point.
Yeah.
And that's the only thing you're going to see above the ground is just this small green box which has the electronics, and that'll be back from the curb. But what councils, from our research, didn't want to see is now if you go into London, you start seeing the bollards down the edge of the road for charging electric vehicles. And as electric vehicles become more common, they don't want to see loads more bollards blocking the view and cluttering up the pavement. So we kind of drilled in on that, and Ollie Freeman and Keith Johnston, who are the original founders of Urban Electric, came up with this idea of having this flush charger, which is where the flush concept came from. So all you see now is just a flush plate with a 1 and a 2 on it to represent the chargers, and then a name for the chargers, so you can call that charger up and select socket 1 or socket 2 and pay for it, and away you go.
And I remember you saying something about you'd already looked at kind of accessibility needs for people who are disabled, because I was thinking about when you were saying about bollards, and if we're talking about people with accessibility needs, lots of bollards are really not going to help somebody who's disabled, excuse me, who actually, you know, they've got to park up. It depends what kind of vehicle they're in, you know, they've got to get out, they've got to try and navigate round, and lots of bollards in the way are really not going to help.
There's a whole raft of things with that, because one of the things I always do on LinkedIn when I'm talking and stuff is try and put things into context. And if you appreciate that about 40% of the population are either elderly or disabled or both, then it starts bringing the size of the problem, because a lot of people look at charge points, but you don't really sort of appreciate the challenges that somebody in a wheelchair may have. If you go into a car park and you look at the disabled space, there's a reason why disabled spaces are wider, because they have to open the car door and get the wheelchair out, or the walking frame or whatever else to navigate around. And then you look at the charger, and particularly the high power ones, you've got a very heavy cable. So if you not have much dexterity in your hands, for example, you've got to try and pick this plug up and carry this big cable, and I've got pictures of people in wheelchairs with the cable around their neck.
Oh my good God.
You know, to try and drag it to the car and then try and force it in and everything else.
Yeah.
So the charger that was developed with Urban Electric and then became Urban Fox, it comes up sort of, you know, about hip height, maybe just about a little bit lower. And the sockets are very low down on either side, so it's very easy to sort of plug your car into it. The payment terminal on the feeder pillar is low down and easily accessible as well. So all this accessibility thing was brought to mind when this was all designed. And again, when it goes flush into the ground, you're not cluttering the pavement up. So anybody who does have small kids on bikes, wheelchairs, frames or anything else, they're not going to have to navigate their way around all this sort of stuff. So there's a lot of benefits to the design of the charger to sort of, you know, cater for that accessibility need of the future.
Clearing up those pavements. You know, and councils. So is it mostly councils that you're selling to then?
Primarily, yeah, because councils will have council car parks and they'll control the residential areas. But basically anybody who's interested, you know, we've got a solution that they can cater for. But yeah, primarily we were aimed at the off-street residential area where the 40% of households are. But we're now getting interest from councils who want this sort of thing in car parks, because it's a very neat solution. Railway stations, you know, anywhere where people are going to park for several hours is going to be somewhere where we want to be.
No, that's good, definitely. On your website, it actually talks about the products being a whole life solution to EV charge points. Can you just give me kind of what does a whole life solution mean? In you know, obviously we've been talking about the way that it works, the fact that it's kind of using up less concrete, so therefore it's decarbonising. What is this whole life solution?
So basically, one of the things with offering such a solution is you're looking at the longevity of the product. So you want to install a charger that is going to last a long time and keep up with future technology, which is what this does. What you don't want is to install something and 3 years later you've got to rip it out and put another one in, and another year and everything else. So we've kind of designed a product that's very, very reliable, that once you put it into the ground, it's going to maintain service for you for a long, long time. And then on top of that, you're looking at something that's going to be reliable, people are going to want to use, it's easy to use, it's a very functional system, and if it does go wrong, you could swap it out and put another one back in 30 minutes. So it's got a long life design on it. Commonly when you put these sort of things in, contracts are normally going for sort of 15 years maybe, whether you have with the council. So you want a good product to put in, one that's going to last a long time, easy to use, very, very functional. All those sort of bonus points and benefits are going to feature for that long life.
That makes sense, because, like you say, you don't want something that, because obviously the cost to install in the first
Yeah,
place
yeah.
is going to be very significant,
It's
isn't it? So
reputational
you don't
brand
want
as
to have
well. Imagine if you bought a car and then 3 years
absolutely.
later it's defunct and you've got to buy another one. You're not going to go for that brand again, are you? So
No,
it's
you
all that
never. No.
reputational thing to try and stand you up. I mean, there's certain EV charging companies out there who their products are, for want of a better word, unreliable, and they fail very early, and then that company then gets a bad reputational risk because of it. I won't mention any companies in particular, but those in the industry tend to know which ones they are. So
I've
it's a
heard
very
too.
easy. A lot of people are trying to enter the industry because there's a lot of work to do if we're going to hit 300,000 chargers by 2030. But
Yes,
you've got to make sure that you've got a decent product that's going to stand the test of time, so to speak.
absolutely. And you don't want, I suppose, the stuff that I've heard is kind of where a product's actually been left unserviced, not working, for X length of time.
I've heard
And
some on LinkedIn. People have contacted me, and it's been 6 months. Some of the charges have been out of action for some companies, and I'm thinking that is,
why do they?
yeah,
I don't understand
you
why
know,
why companies don't do that. I can see the point if you've been given information about a specific area where you're going to put in a charge point, and actually maybe it's not as
yeah,
utilized as it could be or
yeah,
should
yeah.
be. But it doesn't mean that over the next kind of 7, 10, 15 years, it isn't going to be
Yeah.
utilised. So there is a need, there is a requirement, and it's got to be part of the
Well,
contract for
yeah.
them
I mean,
to
if you
actually
think
keep
about
it
it,
serviced.
if it's not working, it's losing your money because it's not generating revenue. So why not get out there and fix it? Now, some companies say, well, we've got an upgrade model that's being developed and we're going to put it in place. Okay, well, why don't you get that one working in the interim? It doesn't make
Yeah.
sense. But they're the companies that want to do that, and that's their choice.
I'm chuckling because something just came to mind. I was just thinking of Bob the Builder. Can we fix it? Yes, we can. Because you can, can't you? I mean, so there's certain things that you can do remotely, aren't
Yeah, I
there?
mean,
You know,
you can reboot the computer remotely. You can unlock
yeah,
a
yeah,
cable and this sort of stuff. But it's if there's a technical failure that somebody's got to go out and engineer, take the cover off, and do it, that then starts getting very, very specialised. And during my time at Veni, I was approached by local councils saying, "Well, we've got these charges that are losing us money because they've not been working for 6 months, and the company won't come out and repair them. Can you have a look?" And I said, "Well, my guys aren't trained up to do work on those charges, so strictly speaking, no, we can't do anything with it. You need to chase the company up again." And it gets their frustration because they're sort of, well, people are complaining to us because the charges aren't working. We can't do anything about
yeah,
it. And yeah,
yeah. But that, in my mind, that is a need in the contract, isn't
yeah,
it? It's kind of a need to change the
very much
terminology
so. Very
and
much so.
and the terms in the contract to make sure that for a local council or whoever it is that's putting these in, that the charge point operator is beholden.
Yeah,
They have to go out and
yeah,
repair them, and
yeah.
they have
We
to
think
repair
that
them
was
in
the
a certain
case, but I
kind of
say
time frame.
I've had councils approaching me and saying, "Can you come over and have a look?" And I'm sort of sorry, but
Yeah,
I can't really help.
and that's but and that's not down. That is not down to you, is it at all? It's down to that
Yeah,
agreement between. It's
I'd
down to
help.
that
I'd help if I
contract.
can because I'm well known in the industry and
Mm,
people connect with me and all the rest of it. Then
yeah, yeah,
people will
yeah.
reach out and ask if I can help, but it's not always that easy because the technology is slightly different. And what you don't want to do is
Exactly. And you might.
go in and damage something, and then it becomes
I
your
was just going to
responsibility.
say,
So
yeah, you don't want to invalidate a warranty on
exactly,
something, and then people finger point at you, going, "You've done that, and now we've not got a warranty."
exactly,
So
exactly.
yeah. So there's a lot there. What do you feel at the moment is kind of like an area of best practice in the EV infrastructure? What do you see best practice being? I know we've just talked about, re, for charge point operators. I mean, if we're looking at charge point operators signing contracts with local authorities, what should be happening that's not happening, other than them getting the term, the
I
terms
think a lot of
and
it
conditions
is
right?
for companies. The best practice I always see is people who do their research. And I've, one of the things when you're putting in charge points is you try and work on a high utilization rate so that the charger is going to be used a lot. There's no point in putting a charger in, the outer hills of Wales or Scotland where it's going to be used once a week, because it's going to cost you a lot of money, and anybody investing in the industry is going to want a return on investment as quick as possible. So you need to put it somewhere like a busy car park in a town or a city where it's going to be utilised a lot and get a good return. I have heard of horror stories where councils have installed a load of chargers in the street where everybody's got off-street parking, and you think, what's the point of doing that? They've got to the end of the year and gone, we need to spend this money, put the chargers down that road there, and that doesn't make sense. And people have given me examples of that on LinkedIn. So do your research where there's a high utilization rate, and this is one of the ththings Urban Fox, we've got an analyst and network planner who's doing all this analysis to work stuff with the councils. So do your research, work out what the high utilization rate is, and understand what customers want. It's very easy to put a charger, and every charging company tends to have this solution that says, I've got a unique charger that stands on a post by the side of the road, and oh yes, that's exactly the same as his charger over here and his charger over there and his charger over there, and everybody's got the same charger, just slightly different boxing on the outside. But then understand your customer is your councils don't want clutter down the road. So all of a sudden, all those, start getting negated. They want a simple solution that, it's easier to use. One of the things the industry need to try and steer away from is the use of apps. So a lot of us who aren't in the EV arena, when you go to a car park and it's, oh God, which app is this? And there's like 20 different apps for all the different car parks.
I'm just waiting for this. I'm waiting for this, Randall, because as you know, and by the time this goes out, hopefully we will have an EV. But as you know, we don't at the moment. But I'm already collecting apps on my phone.
But it's we all know, we stand in the car park and I haven't got the app, download the app, put my bank details in, my address, confirm the bank, blah, blah, and all this, and you're sitting there soaking in the rain trying to go, what the hell's going on? And it's the same with EV charging. Every company comes out with an app that they think is a unique app that everybody should follow. Now eventually I think what will happen with the industry is it will be like the mobile phone. Years ago, the older ones of us can remember you used to have drawer loads of mobile phone chargers because every mobile phone had a different charge zone. Eventually they all narrowed down to one common charger or two.
Well, except Apple.
Yeah, Apple went slightly different. But
Apple like to do
now
their
just
own
got
thing.
the two leads and everything works.
Yeah.
So I think with apps, hopefully that'll go. But the government has also got this plan now, as of April the 1st, to make all chargers contactless, which is why Urban Fox have got this contactless solution, because if you think about it, you go to the shops, you buy your fossil fuel, you buy your goods and shopping, everything else, tap and go with your card. So why not apply that to charging? So now, that's now coming in, and you'll see that. It's already on a lot of the high power chargers, but the lower power chargers, 7 kilowatt, 22 kilowatt, that sort of thing, they're now coming in on that. So the industry is moving slowly and realising, and as everything, everybody bombards into the industry, everyone comes up with all these wonderful ideas, and gradually they all hone down to say, right, let's get a common standard here, because this is getting ridiculous.
Absolutely. Standardisation, best practice.
Exactly.
It's perfect, honestly. And kind of going back to what you were saying about like councils collecting data. I mean, I know you've obviously got it, but I know Cenex have got kind of data that they can provide to local authorities themselves, can't they? So that whole, let's just chuck a load of chargers down a road that's already got off-street parking, like you've just said, really that should be negated if they go to Cenex or somewhere, or even the charge point operator like yourself.
GIS and everything else systems, and you've got to look at one, where the desire for the charger is, but you've also got to look at the infrastructure, because if you're 2 miles from the local electrical substation, it's going to cost you quite a bit if you've got to upgrade it to run cables out to put the power in. So you've got to look at the local infrastructure, you've got to look at the transport, what the cars are parking there and how often they're going to be utilised. How wide is the pavement? What's the local substructure where you want to put this? Is there fibre there for satellite TV, TV and phones? Is there water pipes there, electrical and everything? So there's a lot of factors that come in when you start planning to put an electrical infrastructure in. A lot of it might just be walking the ground. You might say, right, let's put 3 chargers there, but there's a 300-year-old oak right next to the pavement, and you think, well, that's going to have a lot of roots under the ground. That's going to be a nightmare.
Yeah.
So there's a lot of factors. It's not just a case of we'll put the chargers there. And that's one thing. Any company that's worth its salt is going to have an analyst and a network planner who's going to look at all this data and say, that's the best place to put it. And then when you go to councils, you could sort of analyse and say, well, actually, where you want it over there may not work, but over here will work because of all this data. And as long as you can justify it through data with facts, then you stand much better. And it looks much better when you talk to people and say, look, we've analysed this, we think you'll get a better utilisation rate here. And when you're proven right, then it stands you in better stead where you go elsewhere. So.
Of course it does. I mean, if you look at what's happened with I feel sorry for the councils in some way, and I don't mean that in a naff way at all, but they've been given this task, haven't they? They've been given this task. They have to apply for the funding in the first place. So they apply to either the levy fund, Levi funds, whatever, however you want to say it, or the Yorks regional on street charging, isn't it? So, but it's kind of like, right, here's your funding, but we're not actually going to tell you how to do it because we don't really know ourselves. So to me, it's kind of like, it makes sense to work with the charge point operator who've actually been. I think that's very much
the case. The councils that I've talked to in the past, a lot of them, because the government has made the application for the AUX funding, for example, where you can get up to 60% of the value of the thing, it's very, very complex to fill the forms in. And what's frustrating is we're less than 7 years away from the 2030 ban coming in on the sale of full petrol and diesel vehicles. And there's very little sort of advertising and marketing saying, this is coming, we need to do this. So councils tend to have somebody it's their sort of part-time job to look at electrics, electric vehicle charging and this sort of stuff. And they don't fully understand it. So one of the ways around it is perhaps for the charge point operator to say, look, we can pre-fill in most of the AUX funding for you. All you need to do is sign. So we'll do all that pavement work and pre-work beforehand. And then we'll come to you with a solution and say, here's your solution, here's your funding, sign there, we will then make it happen. And this is where I come in, on my chief operating role is we've got teams that are going out and talking with councils and doing the sales and bids and all that business. And once they make that happen, they throw it over the fence to me with my team, and I make that thing happen. So I go out to the councils and then we'll talk with contractors and various other people and make it happen. And it's a very smooth process, but a lot of councils are very fearful of that. And again, it comes down to that trust element. Is, do the council trust you enough that you're in a safe pair of hands to deliver a robust solution to them, or are you just going to get the local cheapest civils gangs around who are going to do a dodgy bodge job on it, and it's not going to look very well? And again, it comes back to that reputational risk. So anybody who's working for me, contractor or whatever, they're representing me, they're representing Urban Fox, they're representing Balfour, Beatty, Urban Electric, everybody.
Absolutely.
So we've got to make sure that we have the right people working for us who are operating to the right standards and can do the job correctly.
Because, like you say, all you need is that little bit of reputational damage, and you're a bit screwed. And we do know, as we've been talking about, but we've not mentioned who they are. There are companies where that is actually affecting them. And actually, their reputation is being questioned. But it doesn't, if I suppose my thought is that, if they're putting in at tender process, the tender level, and kind of all of a sudden their bid is the lowest and it's kind of sounds the most fruitful, then would a council still look at those organisations?
It depends on what the council wants to do, if they're going to trust it. Because obviously normally councils, when they analyse bids for tenders, they will analyse and score against set criteria. So it might be technology, it might be reputation, it might be longevity of the company, this sort of stuff. And they will score a weighting against each one. So the council, if it's worth its weight, will do some analysis on the company as well to understand what they're about. You know, if you've got Joe Blogg's installers and they've only been going a year and they're operating out of a garage in Birmingham, for example, you might go, really? You know, do we really want these guys to put in 50 charges in our local community? So there's already companies out there that have got a reputation in terms of good standing, that, you know, they install good charges, they do good service, they are backed by good authorities and everything else. And I keep swinging back to Urban Fox, and people look at that and say, well, actually, Balfour Beatty, good reputation, Urban Electric, long standing, form this partnership. So, yeah, it's selling that reputation and getting that message out there that you are a good thing. And then you make, you know, from my side, I make damn sure that when we do a job, I'm not one that sort of tends to sit back in an office and go, right, you do that, keep me in touch. I will get in the car and I will drive to the site and just talk with the people and say, right, what challenge have you got? How are you getting on? Really looks good. Well done, guys, and everything else. So that I can be confident that they are doing a good job for me. I can be confident they're doing a good job representing the company well. We've pleased the council, and hopefully that generates more work from the council or other councils.
Yeah, exactly. And you've not just pleased the council, you'll have pleased the residents in that council, because you're doing exactly what they're needing, what they're requiring. And like you said, at the moment, you know, there isn't a lot of kind of promotion out there about 2030. Although there is this, I always talk to people, there's this kind of undercurrent of negativity, isn't there? Not with us, obviously. Do you know what I mean? You know, I'm kind of joining the gang, you know, I'm with my tambourine going, come on everybody, we all need to do this. But there is this undercurrent of negativity, because and it would be interesting, obviously it comes up in the press and everything. I'd love to know where it originates. You know, to me,
I write a lot of posts on LinkedIn, and I'm always debunking. I'm always debunking a lot of these myths. I get tagged into a lot as well, and I think the media, the way the media operate is positive news doesn't tend to draw clicks, right? But negative news does, and the matter of the moment at the moment is EVs. So the problem is that a lot of people have a headline awareness of issues. So the big one that comes up at the moment, the Telegraph just did one the other week, and they said, you know, car parks are going to collapse when everyone has EV vehicles. And you go, okay, and people read that and they go, oh, car parks are going to collapse, what's going on here? But then you drill into it, and I always put things into context and say, well, hang on a minute, you've got SUVs that are far heavier than electric vehicles, and they're okay. And not all electric vehicles have the same weight. So everyone goes, oh, when all the Teslas park up, well, not everyone's going to have a Tesla. They're going to have Nissan Leafs, whatever else, which are a lighter vehicle. So people get the headline, but when you look at it, one of the worst ones I saw was, I got tagged into one, and it was a mainstream media in the UK, and they'd done an article and said, it's going to take you 27 hours to charge your EV on a public charger. And I went, what the hell's this? But when you drilled into the article, and somebody tagged me into it, and it was on LinkedIn, and everyone was saying, oh yeah, it's absolutely ridiculous, not enough charge points, blah, 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 and all the negativity. When you drilled into it, some journalist had analysed a town and said, right, there are so many EV owners in the town, and there are so many public EV chargers. Now, if each car takes an hour to charge, which is kind of, roughly about right, maybe a half an hour, it's going to take you 27 hours to charge an EV. So EVs are pointless having, because it's going to take you so long to charge. And I went, okay, but most people will charge on a home charger. No mention of destination charger. We all do different mileages, so we don't all go to the fuel station at the same time. So why would we all try and charge up at the same time? All these factors have just been negated to create this one story that said EVs are disastrous, you know. And it's just putting into context. Another one I saw was some journalist who said he'd had an EV for a weekend and decided, nope, that wasn't me, I'm going back to petrol cars. And his basis was he'd been to several different chargers and all of them were not working. And I went, that's a hell of a coincidence, because mostly Zap Map saying 9 out of 10 chargers work. Hell of a coincidence that you went to several different chargers and all of them weren't working. So is it the chargers, or is it you not knowing what the car's doing, or is there something wrong with the car? You know, again, it's putting it into context, but it's,
Exactly.
yeah. And people, I just try and present the facts and put the points out there. There's a lot of people suddenly go, oh, yeah, okay, that makes sense. Batteries is another one. Media love that. You know, EV batteries are going to destroy the earth. Okay, so all the chemicals and the composition of the EV battery is exactly the same as your mobile phone, your laptop, rechargeable toothbrush and everything else. Oh, by the way, the cobalt used is also used in the refining process to create your petrol and diesel vehicle. You know, for the fuel for your petrol and diesel vehicle. And you get people going, oh, okay, I didn't realise that. So, again, put it into context and you get a different picture of it.
And when it comes to media, though, bad news is good news for media,
because
isn't
it all clicks.
Like,
and the problem is, I being ex-military and everything, I analyse the news and I follow the news and all the rest of it. And a lot of people just get the headline awareness. All EVs are bad. But again, it's what drives that statement. And then you drill into it, and there's one person who's had an EV for a weekend and found all these charge points. And that's not really representative of a population of EV. You know, 700,000 people in the UK have EVs, and EVs are now outselling diesels in terms of, you know, cars going up.
Oh, it's about time though, isn't it? Oh my God, I walked past one the other day. There was somebody, so I'd read something about there was something on LinkedIn about idling, and I think it was somebody that created a kind of cartoon, or I don't think it was a video, but basically had put like a balloon attached to a. Did you see it, to a tailpipe, and it was showing how it was increased. Anyway, so I walked past this this van. The guy was on the phone, you know, in a diesel van, and you could just hear it chugging away. And there were kids and mums walking past this van, and I just thought, just turn your engine off, mate. Just turn your engine off. If you're going to be on the phone for 10 minutes, we don't want to be breathing in your crap.
If you actually look at it, it's interesting. When you look at the emission side of it, of all the greenhouse gas emissions from industry and all the rest of it, the largest sector, I think, is 24%, comes from transport, right? So that's, you know, cars, vans, taxis, big trucks, buses, all those sort of things, right? If you drill into that 24%, 58% of that, 56%, sorry, comes from cars and taxis. So that's why there is such an emphasis on changing transport, particularly cars and transport, because cars and taxis, because they're driving in our cities and towns, and it's the emissions. People go, oh, it's the emissions are bad. Yeah, they're damaging your health. So, you know, we all saw during COVID, when everyone was locked down, how clean the environment went. And it's all being driven under the climate change banner and, you know, the Paris Agreement 2015. So there's a reason why we've got to do it. And everyone going, oh, it's just a fad. No, it's not. It's kind of being done for our thing. Now, everyone will go, hydrogen's the way forward, or biofuels or anything else. Great. You know, they may well be in heavy transport, but in cars, the electric side is catching on, because it's relatively easy to put a electric charge point. You know, you can have your own fuel station on your drive, you know, for electricity. You could put it in the street.
Who else? Yeah, you wouldn't ever have that anywhere else, would you?
I mean, I could go and put a petrol pump on drive, but people complain about it. Yes.
Yeah, I'm sure my husband would love a petrol pump on the front of the house. But, you know, absolutely, the fact that an EV charge point, a home charge point, isn't massive anyway, is it? You know, and you can, as long as you've got the ability to do it, do that. By the end of the month, hopefully, because we're in April at the moment, like I said, it'll be a little while before this episode
I'll be looking forward.
out.
I'll be watching you. I'm waiting for that EV turn up at a show. So
I can't wait, honestly. But the end of the month, we are getting solar panels and battery storage and a Zappy charger.
Yeah. Well, I've got a Zappy as well. It's a brilliant charger at the moment. So yeah, it's a very, very functional thing.
So I'm really looking forward to that. So once we've got that, and we know that we're kind of a bit more sustainable, that's when we start. If I look at me and my husband, I've told you what he does. The guy, everybody who listens probably knows what he does. He's a professor of climate science, and he's not interested in the slightest in driving. Doesn't like driving, don't find it interesting. He'd rather walk, cycle, or get public transport wherever. For me, because of the work that I do, I've got no choice. You know, I'm going to one place in the morning, somewhere else in the afternoon. It's not that easy to jump on a bus or a train or whatever. So it makes sense for me. And I've got a dodgy ankle as well, so I can't walk as far, you know, as the regular Joe Public. Do you know what I mean? So actually, it's me that's been doing all the work, and I was always a bit of a petrol head. So I've enjoyed actually test driving the electric vehicles that I have done. So we've narrowed it down to 2, and hopefully we'll be getting an EV subscription over the next couple of months, and so we can choose, because for us, and I hope people who are listening and watching this who aren't involved in the sector, that they recognise you do a little bit of research. It's such a different thing to move from a petrol or a diesel car over to an electric vehicle, isn't it? You know, if you don't know, because you don't know what you don't know. You know, so do the research in the meantime and get yourself.
And that's one of the challenges with EVs is the problem with EVs is it's a change of mindset to drive an EV, and people are naturally resistant to change because they fear change. And when you drive an EV, all of a sudden you have savings to the total cost of ownership model, the TCOs. You can save significantly depending on where you charge, etc. You have a less, you know, it's a fun car to drive, particularly if you get a performance one, because when you put your foot down, it's instant acceleration rather than like a petrol or a diesel, which will pick up and then go.
I was amazed.
And it's easier to drive. It's less stressful because it's you get to this one pedal driving because the car's got its own sort of braking system. And once you drive it, very few people will go back. Now, everybody will go, well, my mate John down the pub's got a mate who went back to petrol because, yeah, great, fine. But there's 700,000 other people who are quite happy to drive EVs, you know, out there at the moment. So, we're all going to be there eventually driving EVs. It's just a case of, you know, when the ban comes in, you're still going to have the second-hand market for fossil fuel vehicles, but over time they'll fade out. So...
and do you know what? And maybe John down the pub didn't get the support that they needed from the dealership or the leasing company or whatever, because that's another thing, isn't it? It's actually, you know, doing the research so that if you don't get the support, you know the questions to ask the place that you're either hiring or leasing or subscribing to or buying from. You know, you kind of do all that so that actually you've kind of got that already. You know, you can challenge people. You've got enough knowledge to challenge that person, rather than, like you say, John down the pub kind of goes, well, this is a bit crap, isn't it? Do you know what I mean?
We come back to the journalist I said earlier who had an EV for a week and all of a sudden found, you know, several chargers not working. But it's, I mean, the best advocates for EVs are EV drivers. And I drive a Tesla, and I regularly will get people stopping me when I'm at a public charge point on a motorway or something, and just ask me about the car and what it's like. And I could tell them, you know, I won't let them drive it, but I could tell them and say, you know, this is what it's about, and blah, 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 and all the rest of it. And they're the best people who have made that jump into that arena, made that change. And they're quite happy to talk about their cars and what it's like and what savings they're making and all the rest of it. And it's, it's a very, walk up to EV drivers at a charge point. Now, you know, it sounds a bit dodgy hanging around charge points as a charge point groupie and going, yeah, okay.
That'll be me. I actually did that, but I didn't do it at a charge point. A Cupra Born parked next to me at Marks and Spencer's food hall in Reading. and they parked next to me, and I was like, oh, that's the car I'm interested in, or one of them. So I went over to them and did exactly what you're saying and just said, can you just tell me, what do you think? You know, and they'd had either 1 or 2 other EVs before it, and they were over the moon with it. And I was just like, do you know what? That's good to know. So become a groupie.
But the other thing, you get the big fully charged shows. They got Farnborough at the end of April and Harrogate towards the end of May. And they're the big EV shows to go to in the year. And if you go to those, you get a chance to test drive cars. You know, they'll have a load of EVs. You can test drive them around the tracks and see what they're about. So again, do your research, as you say. Do your research, find which car is for you. You might like it, you might not. But then a lot of people go, oh, well, the electricity price is so high. Yeah, but all the savings you're making not buying your petrol and diesel compensate for that.
Oh,
So,
yeah. Do you know what? A friend of mine, well, kind of colleague of mine, I've known him for a few years, and he is just so his company that he works for have just started up a salary sacrifice system, and he was looking at an Ionic
yeah,
5, and he basically looked at the value that he would be paying for charging, because he's not like, they're not getting solar panels put in, but they were talking about having a nighttime tariff on their
yeah,
electricity that supported it, and he worked out that it was something like, for a whole year to charge his vehicle from home was about £386, and but he was putting in on a monthly basis about £80 in fuel. So the trade-off there, it's
yeah,
massive. 386. I thought he was saying 386 was a lot until he actually told me how much he's putting in
yeah,
petrol,
yeah, yeah,
every month. So, the saving there, it's massive. And as part of the salary sacrifice scheme, he gets a free charge point put in at
yeah.
home.
But you also look at it that electric vehicles got less moving parts, so there's less maintenance, all the rest of it, less taxation,
Yeah,
benefit in kind if it's a
yeah,
company car and everything else. So this is where what they call the total cost of ownership comes in, the TCO. And
yes,
when you analyse all of that, it starts becoming viable to say, actually, an EV is a lot cheaper. Now, obviously, if you charge at home and you can take advantage of the nighttime charge rates, it works out cheaper. If you're in the public arena, it's going to cost you a little bit more. And there's all this debate about home charging. You pay 5% tax on your electricity, VAT, but you pay 20% in the public arena.
in
But
public.
now one of the
Mm,
things we're going to do is we're looking at cheaper tariffs for nighttime charging in the public arena.
yeah,
Some people are
yeah,
stepping into that. And again, the other education piece I come to is the media again will hype it and say when petrol and diesel prices go up, the first thing they'll do is they'll go to the motorway services and say, there you go, it's £2 a litre, and that's the price across the UK. Well, we all know petrol stations on motorways are the most expensive, but if you go to Tesco's down the road, very much cheaper. And it's like that with
yeah.
electric vehicle charging. So if you go to the 350 kilowatt supercharger, it's going to be more expensive than petrol and diesel in the long run.
Massive.
But if you're going to
Mm,
use a
mm,
7 kilowatt charger, if you're going to be there parked up for several hours, it makes sense to use that, then it's going to be very much
yeah.
cheaper. So again, it comes back to this marketing piece we discussed
Overwhelming.
earlier about making people aware of how to get the best from electric vehicles.
Yeah, yeah. Like you say, and everybody that I've talked to has said it's a matter of changing our behaviour, not expecting to just be able to go like for
Yeah,
like maybe John at the
yeah,
pub thought. Do you know what I
yeah,
mean? I
yeah.
think I think that's really important. So we were talking about the fact that you're a bit of you're a prolific user of LinkedIn, aren't
Apparently,
you?
yes.
So is that a good place for people to find
Yeah.
you if
So
they're looking?
I'm. If you want to find me, my name is Randal Tiny Smith, Timy. I'm actually 6'7". So hence
Yeah,
my military
yeah.
nickname was Tiny. My real name is Randal. It confuses the hell out of the military circles when my wife gets in going Randall this, Randall that, and they're all going, who the hell's Randall? So because they don't know me as that. But yeah, I've got a very prolific LinkedIn profile. I've got coming up to 12,000 followers. So people seem to like what I write and what I do. And
Of
I get
course
a
they
lot of
do.
people just approach me to talk about EVs on LinkedIn and say, hey, I saw you on such and such, speaking at such and such, because I speak at conferences and various other bits. And they'll
Yeah,
write to me and
yeah.
say, saw you, really great, blah, blah, blah. Can I have a chat with you about, buying an electric vehicle? And I'll set a Teams up with them or a Zoom and just chew the fat over a virtual coffee. So I'm always happy to talk to people, to impart knowledge, to give them advice.
Yeah,
And I say I get
yeah.
tagged into a lot of people. A lot of people will see something on LinkedIn, a media story normally. What's your thoughts on this, Randall? I'm like, right, roll sleeves up, here we go. And then there was one the other day, and I can't remember, somebody was going on about EV batteries and, the disaster of the earth and everything else. So I wrote this thing that battery is the same as the one in your laptop, blah, blah, blah. And I just made a comment on it, and I think there was about 110 different people liked that one comment that I'd made about, put it all into context. So yeah, I enjoy that arena, and there's a few of us around the EV Cafe crowd that we both know, and various other people that we all talk about. And yeah, I attract trolls on LinkedIn just the same as everybody else, and it's normally fun because they'll come up with some thing and you'll shut them down and say, well, actually you're not quite right, and they'll go, oh, okay, what about this? And then you go, okay, we'll shut that one down. What about this? And Prof. Colin Herron, you know Prof. Colin Herron and I, and we joke that we share common trolls because, you know, it's the same trolls coming back and forth to our posts. So, and
just leave it alone, mate. Stop it now. Yeah. So. And what about the website? Where, so for Urban Fox, then how do people what is the website?
So it's urbanfox.network, no comma or anything on the end. So it's www.urbanfox.network. Have a look there. You'll see the charger. You'll see how unique it is. It pops out of the ground. All our contact details are on there. The board's contact details are there, so mine and the owners and everything else, we're all up there. We're also going to be at various shows. So we're going to be at the Fully Charged shows and various shows through the year. Come over and have a chat with us. We've got some nice gizzits and masks and everything else, you know, pens and everything if people want to talk about. But come and have a look, because we've got a very unique solution for that charging thing. And that's one of the things that attracted me to it. Because as I said earlier, everybody's got a charger on a post, you know, by the side of the road. So, you know, ours is unique. Yeah, same as uniqueness of his one and his one and his one. So there's been a lot of thought. This charger has been 5 years in development. It's been tested in 4 councils, and the councils got very excited by it. And then all of a sudden you bring in the backing from Balfour Beatty on that as well, and everyone's suddenly gone, actually, let's have a talk. You know, let's talk about it. So yeah, by all means get in there, and if anyone wants to reach out to me on LinkedIn, by all means reach out. More than happy to have a discussion and talk with people.
Thank you, Randal. You've been absolutely fabulous. It's lovely, and he is just downright nice guy to chat to. So
embarrassed now.
Cool. But listen, on that note, I'm going to say thank you for your time. It's been brilliant to talk to you, and I know we'll be meeting up in the next few weeks, because I'm definitely coming to Fully Charged.
Thanks,
so I will see you soon. And to everybody else, thank you, darling. And to everybody else, I'm going to see you next time. Bye-bye. Bye. You've been watching Electric Evolution with Liz Allan. Don't forget to subscribe and click on the bell icon, and you'll receive all of our weekly videos. Thanks for watching. See you soon. Bye.